Right. It's a bit of a mess. And yesterday I was here and I was using the rotavator because I've got so much area to get ready. I've sown way too many seeds. I was thinking that I was running out of space in the greenhouse, but realistically I had way more seeds than I could possibly ever get into the ground. But now some of those seeds are needing to be thinned out and planted out, and I definitely don't have enough room to pot all of them on. It's warm enough for them to go outside, but the ground just is not in any state to be planted in. I'm not doing no dig because frankly I don't want to use such enormous quantities of compost and sheet mulching. I could sheet mulch and then put on top of that wood chip, like similar to I think what people call the Eden method, back to Eden. That's it. Because I don't want to wait for such a long time before I can actually use the resource that I have available to me, which is good soil. So I am going to be digging because that means that I can use that soil this year rather than in no dig you put the mulch down and then compost on top. So for the first year at least, you're actually just container gardening because you're growing in the compost until that there is no layer of cardboard for the roots to be able to get into the soil. So it's useful in that it will help prevent weeds in that first year. And that was where the problem that I was coming into yesterday, which is that the bits of ground that I have already prepared and planted into, I mean, I weeded them probably 6 days ago and they're already absolutely full of weeds. But they had already had plastic laid over them for a long time and it did absolutely nothing to stop the mare's tail from coming through. Ultimately, you're always going to have to do a fair bit of weeding depending on the site that you've got, especially if you've got particularly pernicious perennial weeds. Anyway, I'll give you a little tour around the site. I'm going to then continue using the rotavator, which will chop up the weeds into little bits, but it will, yeah, so effectively it divides them and means that you have more individual plants, but obviously it, you know, lots of them won't like that amount of root disturbance. And if I don't do that, the ground is also a bit compacted in the areas, particularly where it was previously flooded. So now that I've diverted the water away from that area and I think I've got closer to being able to locate the spring, it's dried out, but it is quite compacted, so it does need to be turned over to get some air back into it. Anyway, long story short, I was just sulking a bit because I was thinking I'm trying to prepare new areas of ground. I've massively over-egged the number of things that I've sown. I have nowhere to put them. And the areas that I've previously prepared and got stuff in the ground are now getting taken back over with weeds. All quite predictable. I knew that that sort of thing is likely to happen, but every single season I make the same mistakes, and here I have more space, so I've just done it on a bigger scale. I would vow to change, but realistically I won't. So I better crack on with preparing that area of ground. What I was getting really exasperated with was the fact that it started lashing it down with rain, so even the bits that I did manage to turn over, I was immediately compacting them, so I'm going to have to go over them fairly briefly today. It's relentless. Got some bindweed, loads of couch grass and mare's tail. I mean, I need to get the a trowel or something out to help ease some of these out, but look at it. Everything that I did very recently is now just absolutely covered in mare's tail again. And the thing is, I obviously won't get as good a yield as I could if the ground was weed free, but what's the other option? Is get no chance of any yield of any crop because you haven't put anything in the ground, or by just putting down loads of wood chip and waiting. So that's definitely no yield first year. And I'd rather have plant roots in the ground, and I certainly don't think it's a realistic option, and it's the reason why farmers never do it, is no dig. I think that it's a useful method if you don't want to do loads of work, and it gives you a way of accessing gardening that otherwise you wouldn't have. And if that's the reason you do it, absolutely fine. I'm not criticising anybody who does it, I'm just saying the reason why I'm not doing it is because I have the physical ability to be able to turn over the soil, which means I can get stuff into the ground the first year. I will be competing with weeds, and I'll begrudgingly take that trade-off. Anyway, enough talking. I'm clearly avoiding doing what I need to do.
So I decided that I couldn't actually rake all of it, because by standing on it, the slightly damp soil meant that I was just going to be compacting it. So, it's going to be impossible. So I thought that actually it was better to trench out some paths, that I was going to put some wood chip in, but realised when I was digging out the bed and preparing it, I got all of these bits of slabs out. So I may as well have just chucked the ones that I've got and reused them, rather than having to store them somewhere else on the site. And so that's what I did. I put those in, and that's meant that I've got 6 beds that I can now use for whatever I want to put in them. And because they're smaller, I can quite easily rake them all out and use the paths.
Rather than bitch and moan about all the weeding that I've got to do, that I feel like it was only a very short period of time ago that I did it. I've just moved some stuff back into the trench that was behind here, because essentially it was just that bit had dried up, because further back is where I think that the spring is, which I'll be tapping and selling the water from. And this time next year, Rodney, we'll be millionaires. And I've started to earth up around the main crop potatoes here, because that simultaneously does a bit of weeding. As far as I know, it's useful to just keep pulling out mare's tail and realistically, seeing as there was black plastic covering this for as long as I know, and there was still absolutely loads of mare's tail in there, it just feels like a completely futile use of time to be covering areas of the ground with black plastic, because the main weed that I'd be trying to get rid of, first of all, I'd have to leave it on there for potentially 2 years to get rid of the mare's tail, and within that time it'll probably just get tangled with loads of weeds and I won't be able to use it for anything. But the consequences of doing it that way are this: just having to regularly pull out tons of weeds. Don't even want to show you underneath here, because it'll be covered. Yeah, look at that. Look at this. I don't know if I've got an onion in there anymore. I do, it's tiny. Look at the size of this. That's some of the other ones. There you go. I'm just going to have to carefully weed. I think that cardboard seems to have done about the square root of all. Right, I'm going to crack on. I know it seems a little bit futile to use a shovel to just hoe off mare's tail, but realistically I'm just not going to get time to properly get it all out, and it's not like I can dig it between the potatoes because I'll end up digging out the potatoes before they're ready to crop. So that's what I've done today. I've got in, since we last spoke, some planted direct sown some runner beans, and this is something that's, I mean, realistically these are cropping way too early, but these aren't even a sugar snap variety, but they are so sweet. And you could argue that I'd be biting off more than I can chew by continuing to try to expand the plot rather than work on the area that I've got and keep it reasonably well tended. And you'd probably be right, but realistically I want to break more ground, and I want to break more ground because that's what's going to keep me motivated to feel like I am still moving forward rather than just tending one plot or one area particularly well, which is probably likely to give you better and more yields and less heartbreak, and it's more realistic with the time that I've got available throughout the season to be able to actually come down here and regularly manage it. But I wouldn't enjoy gardening so much if I wasn't so naive. So I'm gonna keep doing it. The way that I have been doing it. These are way too early, but they're still so delicious. And most of them should stop talking with my mouth full. That is a pleasure. A lot of the time, stuff is never intended to get all the way back to the kitchen anyway. That's made my day. Anyway, I'll try and put this together, and I'll see you again soon. I've been struggling to actually put the videos together because I keep coming down here and just either forgetting to film or not wanting to move the camera in order to film it because I'm just so engrossed and captivated that I just carry on without remembering that actually I'm supposed to be documenting this for my own benefit as well as everybody else's who has been so kindly following along on the internet. Anyway, I will hopefully see you all again soon. The weather seems to be warm now, and I think it should be for quite a while. Keep on gardening, and I'll see you again soon. Thanks very much for watching.